With the latest agriculture news from across the state and nation, it's time for the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. Here's your host, Sabrina Halverson.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning on the AgNet News Hour. I'm at the California Association of Pest Control Advisors, or CAPCA, annual meeting, held this year at the Disneyland Hotel Convention Center in Anaheim. In today's show, we have interviews with some of the exhibitors and presenters. We start at the UPL booth. To get us started. And on the record, your name, title, and who you're with, please.
My name is Cassandra Reeser, and I work for UPL. I'm a technical service manager for Southern California and Arizona.
We are at CAPCA this week, and you are presenting on several products. I want you to tell me a little bit about it, especially for our listeners who, for some reason, couldn't be here this week. What should they know about what you're presenting?
Yeah, so I will be presenting on 3 products, and I'll talk about 2 today. I'm talking about Shenzi 700, Shenzi 400, which is different concentrations of the same molecule. It's a Lepidopteran-specific insecticide. And I'm also talking about Basics, which is one of our newer Bacillus subtilis biofungicides.
Let's start off with Shenzi. Tell me about that.
Okay, so Shenzi is our chlorantraniliprole insecticide, which means it is a very strong lepidopteran, offers very strong lepidopteran control. But it also picks up Colorado beetle and grasshoppers as well. This insecticide is relatively new to the market. We're offering both a 700 dry formulation and a 400 liquid formulation. For our Shenzi 400 SC is going to be geared more towards our annual and row crops, and our Shenzi 700 dry formulation is going to be formulated more towards our permanent crops. So for Shenzi 700 California, we're looking at navel orangeworm, we're looking at a lot of those PTB, and OFM for tree nuts, and our leaf miners and leaf rollers for vines. A lot of really strong, long-lasting residual for our chlorantraniliprole Shenzi product. And then for our 400, it is a great product for our diamondback moth control and our brassicas on the coast.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the features and benefits for Shenzi. Tell me, what would you say are some of the prime things that our growers should know?
Mainly, they should know about its fast-acting and long-lasting residual control. What happens is it releases different chemicals in the lepidopterans once it's ingested or contacted, and it causes spasms and reduces feeding, and ultimately within 72 hours causes mortality to the lepidopteran pests. And it also offers about 21 days of residual control, so it keeps those crops protected against those pests for a long time.
That residual control is important.
Yes, absolutely.
What kind of an impact would this have on beneficial insect populations, such as honeybees?
Yeah, so it's going to be very low impact on those beneficial populations. Because it's lepidopteran specific, it really has a great fit for IPM programs, especially if you deal a lot with pollinator plants such as almonds. So really low impact on off-target pests.
Now, is this something that is registered in California, or are we still waiting on that?
Nope, it is registered and available to buy today. And that's both formulations, the 700 and 400.
And let's talk about your other product for a minute. Tell me, what are some of the key features and benefits for that?
So the second product I'm going to be talking about is Basics, which is a Bacillus subtilis biofungicide. And where these Bacillus subtilises really diversify themselves, because a lot of people are familiar with these types of fungicides, is in the strain. So we have a relatively unique strain called IABSO3, or BSO3, and really where that comes into play is each one of these strains has its strengths. So one strain might be really tough against powdery mildew, but our strain has actually been showing extremely good control against alternaria, powdery mildew, gummy stem blight, to the point where it's competitive with some of the conventional standards.
So just name me some of those problems. I can guess what crops this is good for, but what crops would you use this for?
And this is big for grapes, strawberries, cucurbits, gummy stem blight. You can use it across the board, alternaria control. So Bacillus subtilis is great because it has a very broad label, but main crops, grapes and fruiting veg, leafy veg, berries.
And this is something that can be used as needed, but also preventatively.
Yes, so this is a preventative mode of action, so it activates the SAR system, which is like the plant's defense system. So it is very preventative. It's not going to have any reach back or curative control of these fungal pathogens. So you put it on early and often.
And what is there anything else that you think growers need to know about Basics?
Great thing for basics is it's really going to help bridge those gaps in your IPM program. It has a 0-day PHI, so you can use it up to harvest, 4-hour REI, so that allows your workers to get back into the field. And again, broad spectrum label is highly effective against a multitude of fungal pathogens. And it has a lot of different application methods like foliar, in-furrow, fumigation, so it's a very flexible product. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to your presentation.
Oh, thank you so much.
We'll continue from CAPCA right after this.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halverson.
We continue from the CAPCA annual meeting held this year in Anaheim. I'm at the UPL booth.
Yes, my name is Katie Driver. I'm the Technical Services Manager for Northern California for UPL.
We are talking about Axios today. Start off telling our listeners a little bit about Axios and what it does.
So Axios 20SC is our new fungicide that we registered here in California. It is registered for use on almonds and pome fruit. It is a brand new FRAC group, so FRAC group 52, never used before in agriculture. So really great when it comes to resistance management. It is systemic as well as preventative, so you get about 26 days of coverage out of one application. So it's really great when you have flushes of new growth occurring, such as almond bloom. You can spray it during bloom and you'll get about 26 days worth of coverage, so that can sometimes carry you throughout bloom and the shot hole period. It does have a 14-day PHI, and it does have a broad spectrum disease control when we talk about almonds, and so you can actually use it all season long up until 14 days before harvest. MRLs are established globally, so we don't have any issues with export or anything like that. It's pretty friendly to use. It has a very low use rate of 5 fluid ounces per acre. And it's a EPA reduced risk pesticide. And to qualify for that, you actually only have to meet one of 4 categories. But quinaprol, which is the active ingredient in Axios, actually meets all 4 of the requirements by the EPA. So from a sustainability standpoint, it's actually a very friendly molecule for not only use, but for the environment as well.
All right, so I heard several key points in there that I think are going to be very important for our growers. I wanted to first hit on the FRAC group because it's important to rotate out that FRAC group, and to have one that's completely new, I think, is almost game-changing.
Yeah, so it's really important for our growers to have some more tools in their toolbox to break up that resistance. We've been heavily reliant on groups 3, 7, 9, and 11 in the almond industry for decades, and we're starting to see those resistance numbers rise depending on the disease. There's a really good chart that UC has put out that classifies each of the different FRAC groups as well as with diseases and gives you a score on how resistant they could be. And when you look at groups like 7 and 11 and Alternaria, that puts you at 18, which is the highest. So when you look at quinaprol, we actually have no cross resistance to any of those FRAC groups that currently have resistance in the marketplace. So if you are dealing with resistance, this is a good way to bring in and clean up all of those issues. It is a single active ingredient product, and so we do want to make sure that we're rotating. You're allowed 3 applications per season, but only 2 sequential applications. So because this is new, we want to make sure that we're taking good care of it and stewarding it so that we have this around for a long time.
Let's talk about the sustainability aspect of it too, because that's also becoming more and more important for growers, and of course we have to meet EPA regulations. And so tell me a little bit more about that.
So from a sustainability standpoint, it is photodegraded very quickly in the environment, but it's absorbed rapidly by the plant. So you're getting it into the plant where you actually need that coverage, that protection, but you're not having any off-target implications. So it's actually very friendly to the environment from that standpoint. It is very low risk to bees, but obviously we always recommend sustainable practices when it comes to bees and not spraying when they're actively foraging, but there's minimal risk to bees as well. So it is actually very friendly to the environment, and again, because it is a low use rate of 5 fluid ounces per acre, it's not only easy on the environment, but it's easy on growers and mixers and loaders because you have very little to load in your tank.
And would that also mean there's less that you have to purchase as well because you're not using so much?
Yeah, so because of that low use rate, you're not having to handle as much material. That is less work when you're mixing loads, but it's also less cleanup when you're done because you have less material, less recycling that has to be done with those jugs when you're done at the end of your application.
So all of that, very important. It adds to the ease of use, I would think, for it as well.
Yes, again, very user-friendly from across the board, even when you either look at the environmental aspect or just the actual application itself. Very user-friendly, and because you get that long window of protection, your one application is going to last you. I mean, that in itself is saving you money on the back end because you're getting that extra protection. So if we do have a quick bloom, which sometimes it's warm during almond bloom, you might be able to spray once and have protection throughout that shot hole period. So it's not only sustainable from an environmental and application standpoint, but also almost from a financial standpoint for growers, because less passes is less money.
All right, any other key points that you think our growers need to know?
I just want to reiterate that this is a new frac code, so completely new, great for resistance management, has a 14-day PHI, and so that long season coverage that you can get out of it, as well as its preventative and systemic. So getting it on before disease development is definitely key, but it will move throughout that tissue and give you great protection.
Perfect. And where should growers go to get more information about this?
So if you would like more information, feel free to reach out to any of our sales reps or team members, or you can look up some more information on our website.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Again, reporting today from the CAPCA meeting in Anaheim, here's an update on today's Ag News. The U.S. continues to import more food and agricultural products from other countries. Gary Crawford has more.
While the dollar value of U.S. food and ag exports is falling,
the import value has increased steadily over time and continues to do so.
Agriculture Department economist Bart Kenner says U.S. ag exports are running about 3% below last year at this time, while the value of foreign agricultural products coming into the U.S. is up by 5%. Several good reasons for those growing imports.
Great purchasing power by the U.S. consumer and growing demand for products that are produced elsewhere, year-round produce, specialized high-value products, distilled spirits, fancy cheeses and wines and what have you.
Kenner says the surge in imports and the reduction of exports is creating an ag trade deficit, though, of over $27 billion and growing. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
We continue from the CAPCA conference in Anaheim when we come back. This is the AgNet News Hour, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halverson.
Out of the California Association of Pest Control Advisors, or CAPCA, annual meeting held this year at the Disneyland Hotel Convention Center in Anaheim. We're heading over to the CAPCA booth now.
I'm Douglas Phelps. I'm with CAPCA Agro USA, and I am the Director of Specialized Solutions.
Douglas, I want to talk to you about compost. Now, we're coming up on the time when people are going to start making their plans for next year. And compost has been around for generations. But is it always the best, product that you can use? Let's talk about that, and let's talk about your product and see what the differences are. First, we were just talking off mic a little bit about compost and how it's used. Let's tell our listeners what you were just explaining.
Yeah, so compost is a nice, sustainable, organic form of nutrients and organic matter for our low organic matter soils that are prominent here in California. Growers have been using compost and manures for centuries as a acceptable and validated opportunity to supplement and amend their soils. But in permanent crops, what we find is that because that compost or that manure is not getting incorporated into the soil so that it can fully decompose into the humic substances that they're seeking, they end up, I'm not going to say wasting money, but they're not getting as much value as they can out of that application. And with our annuity, it is a concentrated liquid organic matter material that can go through your irrigation system. It has already fully gone through the transformation to the point that once it hits the root zone, you're getting the value of that organic matter that our soils lack. And then if we put it out in the fall, it sits there over the course of the fall application. Once the trees start coming back to life and waking up in the spring, they're fully ready to start pushing roots, acquiring nutrients, and setting that tree up for a good crop.
So it makes a lot of sense to me. I know that for compost to fully work, it does need to be really incorporated into the soil. But that's not the case for a lot of our permanent crops. You're just not able to do that. But with annuity, you're able to actually get the benefits of that into the soil.
Yeah, with our manufacturing process, the material it goes through all irrigation, all controlled irrigation systems, no fear of plugging, and the AI that you're looking for out of that compost is delivered directly to the root system to help with your nutrient efficiency, water uptake, and all of the benefits that you're seeking from that compost application.
I like data. And I like to know how things are working. If I'm using compost on my crops, am I using the same compost year after year? And how does that data work?
A lot of people just accept compost as a reputable spend of their money. They know that there's some NPK, some microbes, and in general, compost is just good for you. But at the end of the day, compost also has things like salts. Compost has varying nutrient loads within it, varying makeup of the material depending on where it comes from. So when growers think of all compost is good, all compost is the same, that is not a fair statement. What they need to realize is that in the same sense that when you go invest in compost and put it down on a field, I got to ask them, are they splitting fields? Are they seeing whether the $100 an acre that they're applying, are they truly getting that back in yield increase or in some form of crop health? With annuity, we set out and did 4 years worth of trials. We did trials in the Northern California region and the Southern California region. We did 3 gallons of annuity in comparison to 3 gallons of compost. And on average, across all of those field trials, we had about a 500 to 1 ROI in yield enhancement of the nut crops across those 4-year period. So it's one of those things that we've proven that it works. It's not guaranteed to have a yield increase every year. There's a lot of factors that go into it. But from a dollar spend, if you're going to spend X amount of dollars on compost, we encourage you to put some of those same dollars out with annuity and do a comparison. We want you to see the value in it, but from ease of application through the irrigation, no issues with E. coli or listeria that may come from compost. There's a whole host of benefits that we encourage you to talk to your SIPCAM rep, call SIPCAM, and let us tell you more about annuity and get some comparisons out on the acre.
You brought up a good point just then about the problems with E. coli or listeria, and especially listeria that's been in the news so much lately. And we know about all of these food safety regulations and the need to be careful. This really is a complete workaround, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of companies are offering these food safety programs where they're out tracking and monitoring, and that to me was an area that we need to get with those people to bring the attention to this opportunity to get that soil amended to help with some of the salts and some of the soil conditions that they're trying to amend with that compost application. When it comes to the NPK portion of compost, you typically, with today's fertilizer prices, can tap into that NPK with synthetic fertilizers and don't need it specifically from this organic form of compost that's getting applied. So once again, value for value, ease of application, and some of the benefits that you're seeing from annuity, it definitely presents itself an opportunity that we'd like you to take a look at.
So for our listeners who would like to get more information on this, go to the SIPCAM website?
Yeah, you can go to www.sipcamagrousa.com. We've got a link there to annuity, and you can see the data. You can see all of the stuff that we've talked about. And then on the website, you can click Find a Rep and get the phone number to somebody that can answer some questions for you.
All right, thanks so much for your time today, Douglas.
Thank you very much.
This is the AgNet News Hour. I am Sabrina Halverson, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halverson.
Continuing from the CAPCA conference, representatives from Purdue University are exhibitors here. The next interview is from their booth.
I'm Scott Downey. I'm a professor in agricultural economics at Purdue University.
All right, we are here in California at the CAPCA conference, and you're going to be presenting. Tell me what you're presenting on.
I do research on sales and sales management, and so I've done work on what makes good salespeople, and so that's what I'm going to be presenting this afternoon.
So you're teaching people how to be salespeople.
Or maybe teaching salespeople how to be better salespeople. That's the way I like to think about it. But yeah, there is a little bit of that. If you're a technical person, you're probably the best salesperson that exists. Teaching some of the PCAs maybe a different way to look at their business.
Really interesting. So, how did you get started doing that?
So I grew up in business, so I'm also director of the Center for Food and Agricultural Business at Purdue University and a Cal Poly grad, which is what brought me to the CAPCA conference here in California. And so we're trying to do some work. California agriculture is a little different than agriculture out in the Midwest. And because of my roots here as well, we're trying to bring some of the ideas that we teach at Purdue here on the West Coast.
When people attend your session, what are some of the things that they might hear?
Oh, first off, a little bit about sales strategy and what makes good salespeople. So a couple of the things that we've found through our research is that understanding customers is one of those things that most salespeople think they do pretty well. But in reality, when we ask growers what their thoughts are about that, sometimes those don't align. And so we start from that perspective, and then we say, look, those people who know their customers the best tend to be the best salespeople. So how do you get to know your customers at that level? How do you really develop a relationship? And so we'll talk a little bit about some of those strategies today.
So, being a Cal Poly guy, how do you feel about coming back to California to do this presentation?
Oh, there's a reason I'm here, and it's because I love California, and I'm a Purdue guy too, so I really have a foot in both worlds. But California agriculture is so unique compared to the row crop agriculture that we have in the Midwest. The variety of crops, the regulatory challenges, the labor challenges out here are ones that tend to drift towards the Midwest. So it's almost like being a little predictive in understanding relationships.
We find that a lot with a lot of different aspects of California agriculture and California regulations when it comes to agriculture. Happens here first, but then the rest of the nation at some point is probably going to feel the same thing, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and when you look at water issues as an example of that, California's had those for a long time. Now, every place has water issues, too little, too much, too little and too much. And so understanding how growers here deal with those things, I think sets a standard for the way other organizations can look at it.
Thank you so much for your time and for chatting with me today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks so much.
Getting into some ag news for today, October is Cyber Awareness Month, and cyber criminals are targeting farm businesses. David Geiger has this report.
Good cybersecurity is a priority in agriculture. The impact of cybercrime can be devastating, according to Gene Cowell, special agent in charge of the FBI's Omaha field office.
And the national security risk to our businesses, our farms, our ranches, like our food processing facilities, is really growing exponentially, and no one is immune.
The FBI is monitoring 4 major threats to agriculture: ransomware attacks, malicious software, data theft, and bioterrorism. But Cowell says there's a range between what is most common and what's the greater threat.
The primary threat, the most immediate threat, would be the halting of business operations due to criminal ransomware attacks during pivotal times like planting and harvesting. Any attack by our adversaries, whether on the criminal side or from nation states, to shut down our ability to produce food, feed, and biofuel could be devastating for this country.
Cowell says nation-state actors are involved and sometimes work with criminals.
So it's become a very blended threat for us as we work to mitigate it. You know, the other stuff we're also worried about, which people don't always think about, is really the theft of our data and our technology and our innovation.
With that in mind, and watching some of the largest ag companies fall victim to cybercrime, is it possible for the everyday farmer to keep their business safe? Well, Cowell thinks it is.
But I think it takes a lot of awareness and discipline. I think one thing about our agricultural industry is it is very decentralized. But it also means that there's a lot of farmers and ranchers and food producers out there who don't have an overabundance of cybersecurity resources.
As reliance on network systems grows, it is imperative farmers learn more about cybercrime and how to keep their systems safe. One of the ways to do so is what Cowell calls good cyber hygiene. He recommends going to the FBI website and getting to know your local FBI branches as you learn how best to protect yourself.
I mean, the number one thing with cyber hygiene is don't click on a link if you don't know where it came from. You know, if you receive an unsolicited link or offer from a source you don't know or can't verify, don't click on it.
The FBI wants to help, Cowell says, but many cyber attacks are not reported.
If you are the victim of a cyber attack or ransomware attack, call us. There's a lot we can do to help provide response, either help get you back into business, to impose risk and consequences on the cyber adversary. And sometimes if we're called quick enough, if a ransomware is paid or if you lose amount of money to try to retrieve those funds and get them back in the pockets of the people who earn them.
Still, the work in protecting the agriculture industry from cybercrime, Cal says, relies on the partnership and trust with local FBI offices.
So we just encourage people to read about what the FBI is doing in the agricultural space to help protect it. Call your local FBI office if you have questions or want to learn more. Look online and just know that we're here and stand shoulder to shoulder, do whatever we can to help protect this part of our country's critical infrastructure.
I'm David Geiger reporting.
This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halverson. We will continue from the CAPCA conference right after this. This segment is brought to you by Live Earth Products. To get to know a little more about Live Earth Products, we're talking on the phone today with Vice President Russell Taylor. For the Conservationist of the Year, what goals would you like to see occur this year?
So this is continuing work as the Certified Crop Advisor Conservationist of the Year. They're looking for certified crop advisors who are trying to aid farmers in getting information or conservation practices. One thing we've identified that is keeping farmers from getting conservation practices is actually just information and products. The current federal regulations actually were written in the 1950s. And at that time, those rules were only restricting fertilizers and pesticides. They didn't put into account other developing technologies such as plant biostimulants and some of these newer technologies we're using in agriculture. And so for 2024, our goal is to really help change the laws that are impacting biostimulant regulation to allow them to be used and treated as a fertilizer, not as a pesticide.
So what does that process look like to go through that and get that change to be where it needs to be?
Well, actually, there's a very long on-ramp. We've been working on this since 2014, and the bricks that we've laid on this path are now hopefully being included in the Farm Bill. So more than anything now, it's just supporting the work we've already done, trying to get legislators aware of the problem and hopefully enact those rules. There's an act right now by California regulators. It's called the Plant Biostimulant Act. And so the best thing that farmers can do is call up and say, hey, we support this language. This is going to give us more tools to enact those conservation practices and have more products available to us.
To get to know more about Live Earth Products, you can visit them online at liveearth.com. That is spelled LIVEARTH.com.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halverson.
We are continuing from the CAPCA conference where I have stopped by the Almond Board of California booth, and I am talking with Lauren Fan. Would you please go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners? Tell us what you do at the Almond Board.
Yeah, so I am the pest management specialist at the Almond Board of California, and so I oversee the research portfolio for everything from insects, diseases, weed management, and nematodes, and also looking at innovation for the pest management research portfolio.
So I want to ask you about a couple of things. I'm going to start off with asking you just about CAPCA. Have you had some good conversations out here today?
Oh yeah, it's definitely been really fun and nice to be able to see a lot of people that I don't get to see until I see them at the Almond Conference. And also, I'm fairly new to the industry. I've only been with the Almond Board for 2 years. And even within that short period of time, I've been able to make a lot of connections. So it's been really nice to catch up with people here and talk.
All right. Let's talk about the Almond Conference that's coming up in December. And you're going to be one of the presenters. So let's talk about what you're going to talk with growers about there.
Yeah, so I have 2 sessions that I've organized and moderating. One of them is called New Pests and the Prevention Against Future Invasion. So here we're going to talk about the 2 most recent invasive pests. We have Carpophilus and red leaf blotch. And then we're going to have someone from CDFA to talk about ways that they're looking at preventing these invasive insects from entering California. And we also want to talk about if you are bringing plant material or anything like that, what are the proper ways to do it so we don't continue to have pest outbreaks and things like that in the future and trying to mitigate it.
Very important topic. As you went into your planning, what was your thought process?
I think more than anything, it's trying to get growers and PCAs the most up-to-date information we have about these two new invasive pests. Thankfully, and other countries that are growing almonds have these two pests, so we're not starting from zero. So we have a baseline that we can work from, and so that makes it better to be able to work together collaboratively with other researchers across the world. And so just thinking through that way is nice, and trying to give them, growers and PCAs, that information, and seeing that people are working on it and aware, and it's not being left aside.
Yeah, that must be really helpful to know that there has already been some research started in other countries where they're facing this, and then to be able to add on to that research is probably helpful.
Yeah, it is. And then also with Carpophilus, one of the big things where it feels bad to say excited, but we're excited about is that we have Australia that has Carpophilus, and we have Carpophilus, so we can do 2 years of research in 1 year with the southern and northern hemisphere working on research projects all year long. So it's really nice to be able to have those connections, and so looking forward to hearing more about what's happening in the research world for these two invasive pests.
All right, so that's your first session. Tell me a little bit about your second session.
My second session is called Design, Analyze, and Refine Your Pest Management Plan, and I'm really excited about this one session. I know that growers and PCAs are constantly looking for new information on how to work together, as well as trying to learn as much as possible. But at the moment, when it comes to navel orange worm or stink bugs, there's not a lot of things that we can add to the toolbox without taking a long time of research. So, shaking things up, I'm going to have a PCA and a grower sit on stage and work through a pest management plan, and designing it and talking about what changes they made throughout the year, what data are they using and collecting in order to make these decisions, and also trying to get people to think more about what should you be asking of your PCAs and what should growers be asking, or what PCA should be asking of their growers. And so really trying to get conversation and really excited and trying something new. So I really like people to come and attend and provide feedback, because we want it to be interactive, and so hopefully that'll get going.
That sounds really interesting to me. I like this concept a lot, where you get to watch what really goes into making this plan. So for people who are there in the audience, will they have the opportunity to raise their hand and give suggestions?
I'm still trying to fine-tune the details, because the two people who I have speaking as their PCAs are Justin Ney with Integral Ag and Joe Coelho with the American Pistachio Growers. Those are the two people who will be the PCAs, and so I'm letting them decide on how they want to work with their grower, focusing on the economics part, focusing on what are the chemicals that they would consider, or the modes of action, and the pests that they really need to target based off of the history of that grower's orchard. And there'll be time at the end of the session for people for conversation, but I really wanted it to be like a live watch of what's going into making these plans.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So I heard a rumor that you had like your own style of doing things. Is that what this is?
Yeah, this is the trying something new out of a box thinking. Instead of having people just sitting and talking about the research and work, we're going to see what research is putting into action, right? There's a lot of data, science that comes into all of this decision making, and we really want people to see that in action on stage.
So what was the title of your session again?
It's called Design, Analyze, and Refine Your Pest Management Plan, and that'll be on Thursday, December 12th.
So since you've only been with the Almond Board for 2 years, that would make this is this going to be your second or third Almond Conference?
This will be my third Almond Conference. My first Almond Conference, I was able to be incognito, and no one knew who I was, and nothing was really expected of me since I was only a few months into the job. Last year, it was full-blown, and it was really exciting, but also I didn't realize how many people would remember me, and so that was also really exciting. But I had 3 sessions last year, and this year I was able to negotiate to 2 and try to weed down a little bit of the work that comes into this, because it takes a lot of work to organize these sessions.
Yeah, I can imagine that it does. So since it's still fresh in your mind, for other people who this might be their first Almond Conference coming up, what would you tell them? What advice would you give to them?
I think It is really nice the way that our outreach team and all of the people who've done the Almond Conference for so long have organized the Almond Conference in a way that makes it really easy to attend sessions that you want to see. So they try to not overlap topics that people will be interested in at the same time. So that's really nice. And I think taking the time to meet with the Almond Board staff and asking questions there, the staff and the board of directors and stuff, that's a good opportunity to find them and ask your questions and not be shy, because I know people have questions about what's going on in the almond industry, and that's their time to get the information.
That's great advice to give, too. Just don't be shy. That's what you guys are there for, right? For people to ask questions and get more information. And for people who are listening and want to get more information about the Almond Conference, what's the website for that?
It is almonds.com/conference, and you can find the agenda online and also register there.
Perfect. Thanks so much for your time. Have a good conference.
Thank you.
Continuing here from the CAPCA conference being held this year at the Disneyland Hotel and Convention Center in Anaheim, I am at the Almond Board of California booth, where I'm talking with Michael Roots. He is the Senior Specialist of Field Outreach and Education for the Almond Board of California. We are talking today at CAPCA, but you've got a conference coming up, and that is the Almond Conference, which will be coming up in December, and you are one of the presenters. What are you speaking on?
The session that I'm monitoring for the Almond Conference is going to be what to do with unplanted lands. So this session is going to walk through options that growers have as SGMA is being implemented, and what options are out there as they're having to make tough decisions in their operations. So our speaker lineup is going to be Mike Wade with the California Farm Water Coalition, Mike Tietz with East Turlock GSA, Anya Radabau with Western United Dairies, Joe Chaparena with Sustainable Conservation, and Brett Sill, who is an almond grower.
So you've got a lot of key speakers that will be in this session. Now tell me, why is this session important?
So this session is really important for the industry as growers have been struggling and having to make really hard decisions in their operations. What we're trying to do is provide options for them. So we have several speakers that are going to be talking about funded programs like LandFlex and MLRP. Those are funded programs that are going to help growers as they have to decide if they're going to fallow land. Sustainable conservation is going to talk about practices that growers can do. So if they're going to leave their land open for a year or two between plantings, they can do cover crops, they can do groundwater recharge. So there's other options that growers have rather than just a one-size-fits-all. Every operation in every area of the state is going to be very different. And we just want to provide growers what options are out there, whether it's funded or ideas for practices that they can do.
It is an important topic. You always hate to think of growers who have to fallow their land for whatever reason, but the ideas of what do you do with it after that, very important to talk about.
There is. I think that a lot of growers are going to have to make this decision. There's also a lot of research that's been funded that shows sometimes it's good to leave land fallow for a year or two between plantings to give the ground a little bit of time to rest. And as growers have a whole operation, so some growers are larger and they have to make decisions of what am I going to do here? What am I going to do there? What's my water budget for next year? What's my water budget going to be in the future?
So for people who would like to get more information about your session and just about the Almond Conference in general, how can they find that?
So they can go to almonds.com/conference. You can find the agenda. You can register for the conference. Again, that's going to be December 10th through 12th in Sacramento at the Convention Center.
Anything else that you want our listeners to know?
We hope to see you at Almond Conference. We're excited to have you, and we hope that you all can make it out there.
All right, thank you. Well, that is our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Sabrina Halverson. Have a great day.
To get more information on the topics you heard today, visit AgNet West at agnetwest.com. You can also stay connected by following us on our social media at AgNet West on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Also look for Sabrina Halverson on Facebook, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast by searching for AgNet West on your podcast app. Thank you for listening to the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. AgNet West Radio Network, your primary choice for agriculture news.